Good afternoon. Welcome to RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. It's 4:15 on the East Coast. I believe that's 1:15 on the West Coast. Thanks so much for streaming in from coast to coast and including, of course, the Central Time Zone here in Alabama and all across the zone and the Mountain Time Zone. Thank you so much again for streaming in. And a shout out if anybody's watching in Alaska or Hawaii in those time zones, and really anybody out there that can get the internet, which is a lot of people. So welcome in. It's Thursday, February 12th. Of course, we had some coverage earlier with RSBN host Robert McNeely right here in Studio B. Today, we know at 4:30, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, will hold a press conference highlighting the Trump administration's historic border security and drug seizure efforts. So, you know, if you've been watching RSBN for the past year or so, you know that we have been talking about the southern border. We've been interviewing various people when it comes to the southern border. We may get to that interview in a Throwback Thursday segment in just a minute. But of course, the big news right now, the SAVE Act passes the U.S. House of Representatives. So we're one step closer to photo ID, voter ID and proof of citizenship in order to vote in federal elections. And joining us in just a minute will be the former ambassador to Denmark, Carla Sands, to join us once again here on the network. At 5:30 tonight, the president participates in a policy meeting at the Oval Office. That is closed press at this moment. Of course, it's been a busy week, a lot of news going on, and it is, of course, Thursday, February 12th. All right, so the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act would take securing our elections to the next level. The president earlier today calling the legislation a new name. Let's take a look at clip one.
It's called the Save America Act. We've changed the name. It's the Save America Act, and the Democrats are against it. I heard one of them say, we will stop the Save America Act. No, we're trying to save America. And it has to do with largely voting. And basically, it's got three very simple points. It's got voter ID, photo ID, but voter ID with a photo, right? It's got the confirmation of U.S. citizenship. You have to be a citizen. So you have a vote, you have an ID. That's about a 99% one. And I think 90% with Democrats. Then you have confirmation U.S. citizenship. That's about a 99% one with Republicans, about 86% with Democrats, except Democrat politicians because they cheat on elections. And then you have no mail-in ballots. And there would be no mail-in ballots, very important. You know, we're the only country in the world that does a system like we do. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in ballots. The way we do this is unbelievable. It guarantees cheating. So it's no mail-in ballots with the exception of disability, illness, military, or if you're traveling, you can get an exemption. You know, if you happen to be out of the country for a good reason, you can have an exemption. So with exceptions, it's no mail-in ballots, and that will assure the security of our crooked elections. We have crooked elections.
All right, so the president earlier today speaking about a number of topics. We'll get to some of those topics in case you missed some of that live programming here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Of course, in just a few minutes, we'll be hearing from the DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, to give us a border update and to hear about the drugs that they have seized over the past year and change. But in the meantime, let's go back to the Save America Act. Joining us now is former U.S. Ambassador to Denmark under President Trump's first administration. Carla Sands joins us. Thanks again for joining us.
It's great to be with you and your viewers, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Always glad to have you here on the broadcast. Isn't it interesting? President Trump has now called it the Save America Act, which that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
There's no one that's better at branding than Donald Trump. Our president is the master brander. And I heard you earlier talking about how our Secretary for Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, is going to be making an announcement today at 4:30. EPA is going to do an announcement today, too, and it's going to bring down the price of cars for our people that want to buy a car. It's also going to make our cars more enjoyable to drive and less of a pain in the butt. So I'm excited to hear what EPA is going to say today.
Exactly. And we did see the EPA Secretary Lee Zeldin earlier. So we'll be hearing from the president once again, one of the clips that we have for that. But, outside of the EPA, of course, looking at the election system in America, we know, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's okay to repeat it, to keep it going, to keep the message out there that all these other countries have voter ID. And right now, the greatest country on earth doesn't.
Matthew, Somalia just passed a law that they're going to have voter ID. We know what the Somalians have been up to in the US, not the most honest people. Americans are honest people. We like good government. This is a bipartisan issue. And every American, no matter if they're a Democrat or Republican, should be calling their senator and insisting that they support the Save America Act. Because Republicans, Democrats, independents, we all want our elections to have integrity, to be honest, and we all, across the board, a majority of Americans, this is like an 80-20 issue, that Americans want to show ID and they want only U.S. citizens voting in our elections.
Doesn't it seem that if there's anybody that's opposed to showing an ID or making sure that this is a citizen of the United States of America, anybody opposed to that already is into possibly a fraudulent way of doing things, right? I mean, what else are you trying to do there?
What else are you trying to do there? And so I just encourage people, no matter who their senators are, on which side of the aisle, call your senator and tell them you really want them to vote. This is going to, the Senate's going to leave. This has to pass. I don't think there's a bill that's more important in the history of our country than the Save America Voting Act. I just think if we don't have honest elections, we don't have a country. And so we really, really need the senators to be told by the people that elected them, this is your mission. And when I hear senators saying, well, we have so much other business to do, we have other things we have to pass. No, there's nothing more important than saving our country from corrupted elections. I mean, we all know that it's happening. We hear it, in the news now and then, and we see what's going on. I'm not going to be an election alarmist. I'm just going to say, let's make sure we have U.S. citizens only voting in our elections one time, on paper, in person, unless I think it's Elon Musk that says, unless you're really ill or in the hospital or you're, serving our country abroad in the military, you should vote in person. And that will really make sure that our elections are more honest.
Exactly. And President Trump echoing that sentiment, of course, and saying the same thing. He's looking to see same-day voting, paper ballots. But when I was looking at the legislation just last night, congress.gov, you could just type in Save Act, and you could see the nuts and bolts of it. And really, it didn't say voter ID. It simply said showing a photo ID and then also proof of citizenship to the United States of America. So really, you'd have to show maybe a real ID or just something that's your photo, a government photo, in the sense of taken, at a DMV, that kind of thing, and then the proof of citizenship. Now, the Democrats, I've heard what they say. They say, well, it's going to take them a minute to find proof of citizenship. And, they're just dragging their feet. They have no excuses, do they?
Well, I do think that there are some that want illegals to be able to vote. We know who they are, but it doesn't matter. You call their office anyway and register your opinion because you have a right as an American citizen. And Matthew, I will just tell you, so many states across the country actually allow illegals to get those licenses, whether it's California or Pennsylvania, and they have the Motor Voter Act. So when you sign up to get a license, even the real ID, they're registering people. They're allowing people not to show proof of citizenship and register to vote. It's happening in many states across the country. This will stop that from happening. And it's not federalizing our elections. Some of the Democrat leadership, not all, but what the Democrat leadership is saying, that this is going to federalize our elections. It's not true. What it is doing is securing our elections. It's still run by the states and the counties and the precincts, but it's going to make sure it's citizens only, which is the law, but it's not being followed by these states. They're doing workarounds and like the Motor Voter Act. And the fact that I have read that there are some states, 25% of the people, they can't find them in the database, but they're registered to vote. 25%. I mean, that's that's more than swinging an election. I mean, you can really, I am understanding that there are people in Congress and in the Senate that would not have been elected without illegals voting for them and the double and triple voting. So the mischief that we're now tracking down in Georgia, for instance, in Fulton County, this is heroic what the Trump administration is doing, because certainly there are many patriots that want to find out what happened in 2020. We all know they stopped counting in the middle of the night. We all know that we watched those hours where they were hiding and counting and triple counting. And we know that some people won that election, but were denied their seats that they earned because of fraud and cheating. The American people, 80-20, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they want clean elections.
Exactly. And they have to clean up, to your point, the voter rolls within that framework. And so I guess the last question is, we know that this passed the House 217 to 213. It really shows that the midterms are so important, because if we get back into the Democrats' hands, then of course things can go haywire. Now that we're into the Senate, it's one vote away in the Senate to get to President Trump's desk. That will be great if it works out. Now, the question is how to enforce or how to oversee this at all of the polling locations throughout the country. President Trump talking about, minimizing the mail-in ballots. To your point earlier, what Elon was saying, if you're in the military or you're traveling overseas or, that kind of thing, not to take advantage of all the mail-in ballots. Right. But do you, any thoughts on, I know this is a little bit cart before the horse, but any enforcement of how we can actually see this happen if it does become law?
It's hard to say because our elections are so local, how we'll enforce it. But it could be that, that election fraud is a felony, right? You're not allowed to vote twice. It's a very serious crime. So if there's enforcement, which there generally is, I'm not sure how you can do it, because even in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, there was fraud. We saw them telling people not to stand in line at certain precincts in swing counties, like Bucks County in Pennsylvania. We saw them arrest and detain one of the committee women who was telling people you have a legal right to stand in line. And while she was filmed, they took her away. And wow. So that's just one example of the mischief. But I think if people call their representative, I'm sure that the Trump administration, they're pushing hard on this. I'm sure Congress is looking at this. How do we enforce it? You're absolutely right. That's going to be a big deal. But I also hope that your viewers will focus on the midterms and getting some energy and talking to their friends about how important it is to vote this November. It's just coming this November, because we don't want to see the impeachment after impeachment like we did last time. We're going to have bigger IRS refunds this year in our paychecks. Already, the average American family is more than $2,200 a year richer than they were under Biden because of the regulation changes and the fact that the wages are going up under President Trump because of his momentum of building our industry back up, reindustrializing us, and growing jobs. So he's creating, and all the family tax credits that he's created, all of this he's doing is creating the greatest economic revival in our country's history. So why don't we enjoy that for 4 years instead of 2, and really let this be the golden age of America? I'm excited about that, but it's going to take all of us working toward keeping it that way.
Yeah, definitely. And more wins like this. This would be huge to see this pass in the Senate. So Mr. Thune needs to get on board as well if he hopefully doesn't hold back at all, and that this would pass the Senate. And then, of course, the president would sign it, and it would be huge in America. And I think that would really be an awesome thing for us, wouldn't it?
It would be so incredible. And I think your idea, your thought about how do we enforce it? How do we make sure that we're proving that everyone is a citizen that's voting? I actually think that probably some of those smart guys that were in Doge can create a database and make sure that everyone is proving that they're a citizen, that are registered to vote. That might be the way to do it, because I don't think, like you can see, I don't think we can trust some of the states that won't even show the voter rolls to the federal government. And I think they're obligated by law. That's not something you can just hoard. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. And you're right. Some smart people need to be starting to think about quickly, how do you enforce that? Because we've got primaries coming around the corner.
They do. Yeah, a lot of primaries around the country. And to your point, these are federal elections, what we're talking about when it comes to the SAVE Act here. So they have to show us those voter rolls. All right. So Carla Sands, the former ambassador to Denmark under President Trump, thank you so much for your insight. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. All right.
Oh, appropriate. I bought 2 sets. I believe just for you. I went on the block yesterday.
Try to make sure that doesn't blow away. We got everybody? Okay, good. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And I also want to thank Chief Banks for being here with me today. He's the Chief of the Border and has given us excellent leadership in making sure that we're making America safe again and that we're upholding our laws in this great country. I also have with me Diane, who's the director, and want to thank her for her leadership. Sydney's over here as well, has been imperative in making sure this port of entry is run safely and that we are interdicting drugs like you see in front of you here today and getting them off of our streets so that they don't poison our next generation of Americans. We do have Sheriff Ken Jones is here with us today. I want to thank him for his partnership. A key to our success at the Department of Homeland Security is making sure that we're partnering with our local law enforcement and doing our operations together to make sure that we're keeping our communities safe. We have Port Director Rosa Hernandez, who's with us. She's the leader here at Otemesa and Tecate Ports of Entry. And I want to give a warm welcome and a thanks to all of our law enforcement that are here today. Just their willingness to take an oath to secure our country, to uphold the law and make sure that it's applied fairly is an incredible, powerful testimony to their kids of this next generation that will step up and serve in their footsteps. Your leadership and the hard work of these law enforcement officers have helped President Trump deliver the most secure border in American history. And they're helping us win the fight against fentanyl and saving countless lives. In fact, we were just here touring the vault that is so important to making sure that we're interdicting these drugs and keeping them off of our streets and getting them away from cartels and dangerous criminals to make sure that we're destroying them before they destroy lives. But also right here in front of you, just in this bin in front of you, you see enough lethal doses of fentanyl that would kill 10 million Americans if it were to be allowed to come into our country, be trafficked, and poison our people. For 4 dark years under Joe Biden, we saw violent criminals, murderers, gang members, terrorists, rapists, pedophiles, and human smugglers invade this country. Drug traffickers brought dangerous narcotics into our country and poisoned our people and tore our communities apart. But the American people put President Trump back into office. They removed criminal, illegal aliens from our communities. They've stopped the cartels, and they've stopped the flow of these dangerous drugs. And what the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security have done is a testimony to President Trump's leadership and to these law enforcement officers' dedication. For 9 straight months, U.S. Border Patrol has released 0 illegal aliens into the United States. With fewer people that cross illegally, we make sure that our southern border apprehensions were much lower than during the Biden administration. In fact, 93% lower than during that administration. President Trump has cut off the flow of trafficking down at the southern border, and just of fentanyl, we've seen a decrease of 56% drop in fentanyl coming into this country. The vault that we've toured today holds 188,218 pounds of seized illicit drugs. That inventory includes over 100,000 pounds of meth, 59,000 pounds of cocaine, and 7,400 pounds of fentanyl. In other words, that vault holds more than 1.7 billion lethal doses of narcotics, of fentanyl and cocaine. All of these narcotics were interdicted by U.S. Customs and Border Protection in the San Diego area. That's 1.7 billion lives that are saved because of the work that they do. The vast majority of these drug seizures happen at the port of entry, and the majority of drug seizures along the southern border happen at this port of entry. Those drug seizures are incredible to what they do to save American lives. Now, the men and women here at Otay Mesa are heroes who work around the clock to make sure that they're keeping Americans safe. Fentanyl has killed countless Americans who still should be here with us today. In fact, I've met with many parents who've lost children to fentanyl poisoning. Americans like Greg Swan, who the first time I met him told me about his son, Drew, who died from fentanyl poisoning at the age of 24 in 2013. In fact, Greg is one of the co-founders of Fentanyl fathers who've lost their children because of that dangerous drug that was running everywhere and running rampant throughout our country. Also, I met Rebecca Kisling, who lost both of her sons. She lost her 20-year-old son, Caleb, and 18-year-old Kyler to fentanyl poisoning on the same day in 2020. There's far too many stories of that happening. In fact, 1 in 3 Americans know someone that has died from fentanyl poisoning. That shouldn't happen in the greatest country on earth. And President Trump gets up every single day to make sure that it doesn't happen. Thanks to him and to the men and women of CBP, we're winning the fight against fentanyl. Now, President Trump has called the cartels the ISIS of the Western Hemisphere, and he's right. The cartels traffic, they torture, they behead human beings, and they enrich themselves and profit off of American deaths. And that's why President Trump took action and designated them as foreign terrorist organizations on day one. Today, the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security are on the front lines of the fight against the cartels and the drugs poisoning our country. And we are winning. And while we stop threats from coming into our country, we can't forget about the ones that are already in our borders. Right now, in prisons and jails across California, ICE has lodged detainers on over 33,000 criminal illegal aliens. Instead of honoring these detainers against criminals who trafficked drugs and committed crimes across the American people, Governor Newsom and California's sanctuary policies have released over 4,500 criminal illegal aliens back onto the streets to create more victims that will harm more Americans. We need him to work with us and these local law enforcement and community leaders and elected officials here in California to protect Americans, to make sure that we're interdicting more of these drugs before they poison more Americans. And we need them to work with us to help make sure that we're keeping our law enforcement safe. Our ICE officers and CBP officers are facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them. a 3,200% increase in vehicular attacks against them, and an 8,000% increase in death threats against them. On January 23rd, an illegal alien here at the San Diego Sector Border Patrol attacked a law enforcement officer, hit him in the head with a rock, left him lacerated, bruised, and bleeding. He was hospitalized, but his assailant did escape. That attack was the 7th recorded assault on a Border Patrol agent in San Diego since October. Law enforcement officers take an oath. They pledge to protect citizens, and they work hard to uphold to the truths that our founders created this country on. In the Declaration of Independence, our founders pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor to keep people safe, so that fellow Americans and our children could live in freedom, that they could live in safety. And that's the same pledge that our law enforcement officers take each and every day. They deserve our gratitude. They deserve our thanks, because their job never ends, and they keep working every single day to make sure that Americans are safe, that they're protected from criminals that would not just traffic them and their children, but also traffic these drugs in to kill our next generation. I want to thank you all for being here, and I have all the confidence in the world of the law enforcement standing here today to continue to do their work, to protect Americans. And with that, I want to introduce Chief Banks to come up and share a few words with you as well. Chief?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. As the Secretary said, my name is Michael Banks. I'm the Chief of the United States Border Patrol. I want to highlight something that the Secretary just shared with you. Enough fentanyl in front of me to kill 19 million Americans. That's in one location across the entire southwest border. As you go across the southwest border, you continue to see these type of seizures. And I'll talk about why we're seeing these type of seizures. Under the Biden administration, every Border Patrol agent was forced off the line, left the border wide open, and we're doing mass processing of illegal immigrants into the cities and into this country. When President Trump came back in on day one, a catch and release ended. The United States Border Patrol has not released a single illegal alien in 9 months, and that's a record we're very proud of, and we're going to continue pushing forward. But under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Noem, we've been able to get the most secure border we've ever had in this country. And we're not done. We're going to keep pushing until it's 100% secure. But what does that mean for these drugs that you see sitting in front of us? What that means is the thousands of OFO officers that were pulled away from port of entries and sent out to the border to help Border Patrol agents process millions of illegal aliens are now returned to their port of entries, where they can do more inspections, they can look for more narcotics, they can operate the equipment and technology that this administration has given them, and that's why you're seeing this massive increase. What you should be concerned about is how much narcotics got through in 4 years when we had little to no OFO officers down here able to do their job because they were forced to come out and process millions of illegal aliens and release them into the country alongside the Border Patrol. I'm going to pass it off to Diane Sabatino, the Executive Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. But thank you.
Good afternoon, really, and thank you, Secretary Noem, for being here with us today, and Chief Banks also for your great partnership in CBP. We're really grateful for the opportunity to highlight the work of our frontline personnel, the work that interdicting these narcotics every day to secure our borders and protect our communities. What you just heard from Secretary Noem reflects our mission to secure the border at ports of entry. Frontline personnel applying their training, the intelligence, and technology to keep dangerous narcotics out of our communities. It's demanding work. The men and women who carry out this mission do so with professionalism, often under incredibly challenging conditions. It's never boring here in Otay Mesa, and their commitment makes a real difference to the outcomes that you see right in front of you today. And as the Secretary mentioned, our success reflects joint enforcement across CBP and aligns with the administration's priorities. Strong enforcement to ensure border security and support for the people who are the backbone of the mission that we're responsible for. And the Office of Field Operations continues to work on key initiatives, including obtaining advanced information for shipments and travelers, modernizing processing systems, and investing in technology that allows us to operate effectively. All of these efforts really support our most valuable resource, which is our frontline personnel. That includes our CBP officers, our Border Patrol agents, our import specialists, and our agriculture specialists. And the One Big Beautiful Bill Act represents a generational investment in our border security mission. Funding from the Act is going to allow CBP to expand capabilities such as non-intrusive inspection technology and responsibly integrate artificial intelligence, machine learning into the work that we do. And more importantly, the Office of Field Operations is going to be able to hire more than 5,000 CBP officers to bring here to the ports of entry again, to identify more narcotics, interdict, and to disrupt the cartels. Our border security mission is national security, and our efforts are never going to stop. And we're proud to be here supporting this critical work. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Chief Banks, as well. With that, we'll open it up to any questions that you may have. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, what I would say is that we are extremely grateful for the partnership that we have with local law enforcement partners like the sheriff over here. He has been a fantastic partner with us in getting these drugs interdicted before they get onto our streets and kill Americans, and not just Californians. They would be trafficked all over the country. What I would say is I hope that Governor Newsom will partner with us more, that he would work with us to honor our detainers. You heard me earlier in my statement say that there's 33,000 people that are in California jails that have committed crimes against the American people. Before they are released back out onto our streets, give them to us so that if they're criminal, illegal aliens, we can return them back to their home countries so that there aren't any more victims in this country. We shouldn't be letting people stay in this country to commit more crimes when they haven't come here the right way. So many Americans fought to come here from other countries the right way and become citizens and believe in the freedoms and the liberties we stand for. I would invite Governor Newsom to partner with us to make sure that those criminals are removed and that we continue to keep our streets safe. Well, they're obviously expressing their First Amendment rights, and we welcome that. As long as they do so peacefully, I think it's a wonderful thing. Yes. Well, listen, I'll never give you details or give you an explanation on law enforcement activities. I don't want to put our law enforcement officers at risk by exposing some of the planned operations that they may or may not have. But what we are focused on, and I'll tell you as far as the Department of Homeland Security and ICE and CBP, is targeted operations, going after specific individuals that are a threat to public safety, individuals that have committed crimes either here or in another country that are dangerous to stay out on our streets. We don't want more victims in this country. We want to make sure that those criminals are removed from our streets and that we're returning them back home to their home countries when they're brought to justice. So beyond that, those targeted operations, we won't talk about the details of. Yes. Are you talking about the economic impact? You know, what I would say is we welcome the opportunity to partner with community leaders. If they feel that in their city or in their community that the individuals who live there, the citizens, could be better served by a partnership with us, we would love that. We would love to work with them to make sure that public safety is a #1 priority, that people feel safe in their communities, they can go to their jobs, they can go to school, and know that the laws will be upheld, they'll be respected, and that we'll work together to keep them safe. Yes. Yeah. I think you're asking about detention facilities and the standards in it. Federal standards at our detention facilities are the highest that there are in this country. In fact, we have a higher level of status than many states or local communities have at their jails or detention centers. So we're proud of the fact that every single individual, when they come, that they're well taken care of, they receive food and medical care, and then we return them as quickly as they can back to their home countries if they are being held. The one thing I would point out is that every single individual that's in that detention facility is given the opportunity to go home to their home country. If they decide that day that they want to go home, we'll give them $2,600 and a plane ticket and take them back home. So it's their choice on if they want to stay there or not. Are you talking about our funding bill? We're concerned about the Department of Homeland Security not being funded. In fact, I think it's the wrong message to send to the world at this point in time. When you think about it, every other portion of the federal government has been funded except Homeland Security. That's telling the rest of the world the Democrat Party doesn't think that protecting America is safe. It's the wrong message to send. They keep talking about the fact that they want ICE's operations to be impacted, but only 11% of that bill is ICE. The rest of it is FEMA, which is responsible for disaster response, for protecting our critical infrastructure. If we had some kind of an attack or a terrible disaster that hit our country, FEMA is the agency that's responsible for running our government, for stabilizing our country. And the Democrat Party is choosing not to fund FEMA and put us in jeopardy in that situation. The other things that wouldn't be funded is TSA. The security at all of our airports is in jeopardy because they've refused to fund the Department of Homeland Security. The TSA, those officers that show up and check your bags, they screen individuals on if they're safe to get on airplanes or not, they won't be paid. After Friday, they won't be paid and won't receive their paychecks. And I hear people talk about the fact, well, they're exempt employees, they're expected to still show up. How long would you continue to show up for a job that you're not being paid for? In fact, these TSA employees just went through a 43-day shutdown where they weren't paid. How often do you expect these good patriots to keep showing up and to do their job knowing that their salaries won't be taken care of and their families' bills won't be taken care of? We fund the Secret Service. The Secret Service has responsibility to protect the most powerful people in the world. We also fund the Coast Guard. When you talk about the Coast Guard right now is keeping rivers open on the East Coast so that critical food and energy sources can get to our largest cities. The Coast Guard is out there breaking ice on the Hudson River, the New York Harbor, the East River, and keeping that ice, the rivers open so that we can get fuel and propane and fuel and food to New York and to Boston and to cities that rely on that. What you're saying by not funding the Coast Guard is that the Democrat Party doesn't think it's important that people eat or that they stay warm, or that our national security is protected. So this is a dangerous situation that we're in, that the Democratic Party has chosen to shut down the department that was created after 9/11. This department was created recognizing that we are vulnerable to terrorist attacks and that American homeland needs to be funded and focused on keeping us safe within our own borders. We have all responsibility for cyber operations and funding and going after terrorists who would attack our critical infrastructure, our electrical grid, our water systems, that would come in and hack into our intelligence agencies and our national security operations. The Department of Homeland Security has the agency that's responsible for stopping those threats and going after those bad actors. The Democrat Party is choosing not to fund them and making us very vulnerable to those terrorists being successful here on our homeland. I hope that they will come to their senses, recognize that the American people need to come first, and have a policy discussion that we should be having on a policy bill in regards to any reforms that they want to see. Last question. I heard you ask about Operation Metro Surge and CBP and ICE, and what was the 287G? Now we're still working on 287G agreements that would happen with local law enforcement, sheriff, city police. We would love to have that kind of an agreement with the Minneapolis Police Department or with sheriffs in Minnesota. I know that some of the operations in Minnesota are changing, but we're going to continue to stay focused with our investigators through the Homeland Security investigations on the fraud that's been going on making sure that those individuals there are working to get to the bottom of the billions of taxpayer dollars that were stolen and funneled out of this country for nefarious reasons. So, we're grateful that we've found some agreement on what we can do to try to work together. We're looking to formalize those to make sure that we can bring peace and safety to the Twin Cities. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right, so you saw Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security in San Diego. The motto there, America's finest city. And you saw a lot of narcotics that have been seized by the United States government, something that you would not have seen under the Biden administration and many other administrations out there. This is definitely a time for law and order to get our country cleaned up and on the right track. And right there, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, all President Trump has to do right now is a number of things, but sign the SAVE Act into law, but we're not there yet. The U.S. House of Representatives, of course, passed this legislation, 217 to 213. Now it goes to the U.S. Senate. Hopefully it passes there. And then, of course, as President Trump so rightly coined it, the Save America Act. It's all about showing your ID and your proof of citizenship when you vote. It's common sense. It's what's needed to save the country. For all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, thanks so much for watching. I'm Matthew Alvarez. We'll see you tomorrow.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live. Look, don't forget to watch my show right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's imperative that you do so, okay? Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, regular $69.98. Now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely